I can handle things. I'm fine.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Welcome to the show. Chip Franklin with you here on this holiday week. I know that everybody is busy. I really appreciate you joining us. A lot to talk about today. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk to John Nichols. He is a national correspondent for The Nation. A little bit later, we'll talk about the latest surge in infectious disease. The triplet, this RSV thing, the flu and COVID. And yet across the country, we're seeing diminishing numbers of vaccinations for children. And you can thank the Republican Party, Jim Jordan, and others for that. People that will die simply because of the ignorance of this particular brand of fear. A little bit later on, the latest on Tik Tok, and then by the numbers at the end of the show, should we disallow tax deductions for nonprofits? I mean, there's a lot of money that comes into churches, especially in this country. And, for somebody that doesn't go to church, I go, well, how come they get a break and I don't? That's part of what we're up to. But let's start with the border. The border obviously is an issue that is misunderstood in this country. And the former president used it to frighten people and to, with lies, essentially.
Supreme Court is keeping the immigration policy known as Title 42 in place while it considers whether the Biden administration can end it. The pandemic-era policy allows the U.S. government to prevent migrants from entering the United States and expels those who do cross in the name of coronavirus prevention. Tens of thousands of asylum seekers have been showing up at the border in recent weeks, anticipating that this policy would expire. Let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez for more. Okay, and so, Camilo, as you've been reporting, this ruling is staying in place for now until at least a court hearing in February. So what does this court hearing do now?
Hi, Jeff. This ruling will have major implications on the future of U.S. border policy. The Supreme Court has just now allowed U.S. border officials to continue expelling migrants to Mexico or to their home countries under the Title 42 pandemic-related measure, which was first enacted by the Trump administration at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March.
Okay, so the point here is that the border fear mongers are pretty good at what they do. Fear is easy to sell. And it's a great way to get people to either donate through political action committees or essentially just to show up and to scream bloody hell. But the truth is this: our border is nowhere near as bad as pictured. And the people that come into this country commit fewer crimes than the people that are here. But even more importantly, the majority of people who are undocumented or white Europeans. And the U.S. undocumented population has continued to fall for the last 6 years. And visa overstays significantly exceed illegal crossings for the 9th straight year. Joining us right now is national correspondent for The Nation, John Nichols. John, when I watch this coverage of the border, I'm just so infuriated because the greatest irony is when we militarized the border, we kept these people from going home, people that want to come over here, earn money, and go back home. And whom without, if we do not continue to have immigration, this country's GDP is in serious problems in the years ahead. How you doing? Oops, you got your let's unmute you there, my friend.
How about
there?
there?
You go. All right, that's much better.
If I sounded better for you?
Yeah, you sound better. So anyway, obviously, having a border argument with somebody means that you have to pull out facts. And the facts support this argument that immigrants are the future of this country. They have always been the future. And what we've done is, in effect, attack people of color while we're allowing people who are here. You don't hear anything about the undocumented people that come from all over the world who are either they came here with a visa and now the visa is no good anymore and they won't go home. instead we focus on these families. I don't know if you've seen some of these videos of these families. These people have the flu at the border and with their children, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit later. But they wear masks because they're from countries that actually, interestingly, have a higher rate of vaccinations than the border states. Honduras has almost a double the vaccination rate for children that Texas does. So they're more danger coming into this country than anyway. So what's your take on where this is right now with what the Supreme Court did?
Look, I think the first thing to remember is that we have a very long history in this country of welcoming immigrants, and it's one of the best parts of our history. When he ran for president in 1960, John Kennedy, as part of his campaign, wrote a book on immigration and on immigrants and how vital they were for the country. So once upon a time, we had a politics in America that really saw the value and the importance of immigrants, just as you speak about it right here. We have lost that in recent years because Republicans have made it their political mission, not just Donald Trump, it was well before him, made it their political mission to demonize immigrants, to make immigrants somehow the source of all problems when they have never been that. And unfortunately, for a good period of time, Democrats got scared by that politics. And so they stood down, and they were very weak in their arguments for immigrant rights. And so we've ended up in a situation where the debate really hasn't been had, at least not in the form that it needs to be had. And unfortunately, in the current Congress, with the divided House and Senate, we're unlikely to have it.
Well, John, you're breaking up on me here a little bit. I hope I still have you there. One of the things that is, I think I've lost you for a second.
As
there
you
are.
point out, I'm with you.
Okay. So, but as you say this, you have to break this down into facts for people to really understand what immigrants mean to this country. We have to, over the next 10 years, the birth rate in the United States continues to drop, except for first-generation Americans who come over here and work. When I say first-generation Americans, I do truly mean these immigrants. While we're messing with this, let me show you. This is a fascinating discussion. This woman used to be administrative assistant, I believe, to Mike Pence. I want you to watch this if you can and listen to what she is saying. I think that Republicans want it both ways, John. They want Hispanic votes, and they believe, I believe incorrectly, that first-generation people here don't want immigrants coming across the border. They can find people to say they don't. But I read something in Reason magazine that the immigrants that they interviewed about 5,000 people, undocumented people, and they all had somebody here in the States they knew that they were going to go to and live with and then start trying to find work. And when people talk about, well, they're taking jobs from Americans, that's the biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Because you show me Skippy from Connecticut, who is going to go out and work picking strawberries for 14 hours a day, for $2 an hour, best, no health care, no breaks, no paid lunch. But watch this real quick here before, and because I also want to talk to you about George Santos in this segment as well, which is, I have a great piece of film you got to see on this. But listen to a little bit of what this former Pence official has to say.
Yeah, and I'm listening to all of this, and I'm thinking to myself, it's always been ping pong, right? I'm a person that grew up on the border. I grew up in El Paso. That is my hometown. They have shouldered this burden for years now. I've seen this firsthand. Yes, it's a tough issue, and I see ping pong. I see ping pong between Democrats, and I see ping pong between Republicans as well. And look, great. Go to the border. Go and visit. I saw this during the Trump administration numerous times with Republicans going to the border, looking at people in cages like they were sitting animals and ducks. What did that do? Did we resolve anything? No. And then we talk about this migration crisis that's coming over, and these people that are coming here. Not all of them are refugees. Not all of them need it. Well, yeah. And you also throw in that some of these people are terrorists crossing the border. I also had to diffuse that talking point because factually, the intelligence community reminded people that that was just not true. But to all of everyone's points, like Title 42, I mean, it was not meant to be a public health measure when it was enacted in the Trump administration. I know that for a fact because I lived it. And the head of the global migration unit at the CDC never signed off on it, by the way. They were blindsided. And I know this because I was in those meetings with Stephen Miller.
So it's interesting. I've actually heard her speak on this at length. She's one of the Republicans that will cede some important points. I think you're still on mute here, John. There it is. And I think the important point is that we don't have terrorists coming across the border through Mexico. We don't have, the MS-13 hysteria. For the record, MS-13 started here in the United States in U.S. prisons when we had jailed, I believe, Salvadorans. And so what we have, though, right now is a policy that is not even a policy. I mean, what are we saying to Mexico, to Central America, and our presence in many of those countries have led to this? Are you still with me, John? Because it looks like we're losing
I am with you. I can hear you. No,
right,
I can hear you fine. Unfortunately, the video that you're playing is still playing as well. I can hear her still talking.
Yeah, it's not coming through our feed. I apologize about that.
As long as you can hear me, I'm fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
anyway, let me ask. Yeah. So my question for you is has anybody actually presented a policy that brings in just some of the things that I'm talking about how, the positive impact, in sanctuary cities, there's less crime because people feel safe to call the police. Mm-hmm. You never hear people talk about this. There's fewer incidents of undocumented Americans committing crimes in sanctuary cities because they feel comfortable. They can call the cops and not get arrested. And yet I don't hear people talk about that.
No, you don't. And that's a problem. Look, another thing that's really important to understand is that when immigrants get driver's licenses, that creates another area of protection and safety. When immigrants are provided with healthcare coverage, that also becomes vital because, immigrants do the hard work in this country, an awful lot of the hard work in this country, right? They're working in restaurants, they're working in service delivery. If they get sick and they don't get medical care, then that creates a challenge, not because of them, but because we have an uneven healthcare system, right? Our system doesn't do what it should do. So one of the things that we should understand is that when we welcome immigrants in, when we say, if you're here and you're ready to work and you're ready to contribute, we want you to have a driver's license. We want you to, be, out of the shadows and in the mainstream of our society. We want you paying Social Security taxes and things of that nature, because
amnesty makes the United States hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a total win.
And so, but the problem is, and this is a problem that really is with, it was, I think it's getting better to some extent, but for a long time it was with the Democratic Party, because you knew where the Republicans were. They were going to make an issue of this, they were going to demonize it, and they were going to play their games. Democrats tried to talk around the issue, right? They said, oh yeah, we want some kind of reform, but they never really went in deep on it. They didn't give the sort of argument for immigration that was needed. That did create a gap. It was similar, Chip, if you think back on the abortion issue. For a long time, you had Democrats saying that, they were pro-choice, but they wanted to be safe, legal, and rare. They had all these different lines that sounded good. But the end result was that they sounded like they were really uncomfortable with abortion rights. And similarly, they sound often like they're uncomfortable with immigrant rights. And that doesn't work. The way to have this debate in America is, let the Republicans say what they're going to say. They're going to do it whether you want them to or not. But then Democrats have to come back and say an alternative view. And it is grounded in science, grounded in logic, grounded in, the information that you're providing here and that other people provide. Once we get clarity on these issues, right, in our debate, we're going to find that I think the immigration debate will go a similar route to where the abortion rights debate has gone. And that is that we now show in my state of Wisconsin, you've got like 60, 65, 70% of people who are pro-choice. Because with clarity on the issue, they know where they stand. That had a huge impact in our last election, where the governor of Wisconsin ran strong on a pro-choice stance and was reelected quite easily. Yeah, similarly, if you talk about immigration in a clear, coherent, strong way, I think it actually becomes an issue that can be a winning one for Democrats.
So let's take our eraser out here, okay? And let's go down these issues and try to figure out what it is about the Republican Party that they take such a strong stand against immigration, because everything about immigration should be a pro-conservative, pro-Republican issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
People come into this country who are willing to work for lower wages while they work their way up. Who talks about this shit all the time, right? Republicans,
Mm-hmm.
Pick themselves up by their bootstraps. They're like, fine, let's go over here. We'll get a pair of boots. We'll do it. Okay. You see, and this is the part that really bothers me, is that you look at this and you realize, oh, wait a second. Now, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you're not hearing anything about the undocumented people who are here from Europe or Asia.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're just hearing about Hispanics. So I have to ask myself, is there an element of racism here? Well, of course there is. And that when you see that, you realize, oh, shit, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter any facts that I present. If you are that deeply embedded in that kind of blind fear and hatred, I mean, the only thing I can pull out of this, and again, another thing, most first generation people from Central America and through Mexico are Catholics, attend church regularly. I mentioned this before, have a lower rate of crime. They give money to churches. We're going to talk about later in the show whether or not that should be tax deductible. But so it's a really fascinating thing for me that people don't see just what they're missing with this immigration. And they talk about, when I had that woman from the Pence administration, she's talking about, in places like El Paso, we carry the brunt. You go down there and you realize, it's the tweakers that are causing the problem. It's the meth heads. It's not first generation people coming over there. I live 20 miles from the border of Mexico. And I've been living here 16 years. I've never seen a Mexican who wasn't working or looking for work. I mean, our neighborhoods are full, obviously, of gardeners and people who come through, and many people that have them as nannies that, for double income families and dinks. And not dinks, people with kids. And I talk to these people and I just, the full immersion of this is an American. That, first of all, they really are American because they're from the Americas. Okay. So when people correct me about that, shut up. They are Americans. They may not be North Americans. They may not be U.S. citizens. Yeah, they may have come across the border dangerously or through a method that, that may have worked at one time at another, depending on, what policy was in place. But here's the bottom line. Without immigration, our country is doomed. We will not be able to do the work necessary, especially if you're talking about immigrants and agriculture. I mean, without immigrants, agriculture is dead.
Right. Look, but so you put a tremendous amount on the table here. Going back to some of the stuff about how Republicans and conservatives deal with this issue. And I think one of the important things to understand is that, libertarians have historically at their best had pretty good stands on immigrant rights. And so what you really see is a very cynical Republican Party that has in recent decades come to see immigration as a tool that they can use to rally a base, not with facts and not with a good vision for the country, but frankly with, as you suggest, fear and hatred. Is there a racist underpinning of this? Sure. And there always has been in debates about immigrant policy. If we go back even into the 19th century, you'll see that. The tragedy is that, at this point, what is not being said loudly enough, what is not coming through clearly enough in our debates, and you can also talk about the media in this regard as well, is an understanding of what you just said. Look, we need immigrants. I come from Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we had a very fascinating thing happen a few years ago. Republicans in the state legislature were going to pass some very tough anti-immigrant laws. And farm workers, most of them people from Central America, and Mexico, took a day off. They took a Monday off, I believe it was. And they said, well, we're going to come to the Capitol and we're going to have a march and stuff like that. And the only thing they also asked was that the farmers they worked for would call the legislators. The Capitol switchboards were flooded. They were overwhelmed with conservative farmers saying, we can't handle this. We can't have another day without farm workers because we're not going to be able to manage our whole dairy industry. Everything's going to fall apart. And the interesting thing was that the legislature, which was overwhelmingly Republican, stopped on the immigration bills, right? They were like, oh, okay, we understand our own constituency is telling us this is crazy. Now, the interesting thing about that was those anti-immigrant bills that our legislature was considering, they didn't generate in Wisconsin. They weren't developed by Wisconsin legislators. They came in from outside. These were talking point pieces of legislation developed nationally by Republican strategists as part of a theory for how to divide people and theoretically win elections. Now, when the actual conservatives in Wisconsin heard what they were talking about, there was an uprising. They said, no, don't do it. And so I think what we've got to do more and more is to get these facts out, to get the reality out, and to get the people who benefit from immigration to speak more loudly about the benefits.
Great point.
And those are farmers, small business owners, others. Yeah.
I want to get to Santos here, but before we do, I just want to remind people of this fact again. Visa overstays have significantly exceeded illegal crossings now for 9 straight years. So let me just say it again. The people that are coming here and staying with their visas are way higher than the numbers of the people that are crossing the border. And the numbers, like I interviewed Ann Coulter once, and she said there's 40 million illegals in this country. And I looked at her, it was on the radio, and she winks at me. You know, she knew it was bullshit. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about lying, because obviously George Santos, if you don't know this story, he's a congressman-elect. He was elected in the Queens, Long Island area. A lot of high Jewish population up there, and he lied. He lied about where he went to college. He lied about having a charity. He lied about working for Citicorp and Goldman Sachs. He never did, but he said, "Well, I worked for a company that did business with them," which is me like saying that the supermodel is my girlfriend because I have a picture of her in a magazine, right? It was all these lies continue. So of all people, he was interviewed. Have you seen this Tulsi Gabbard interview with him on Fox? All right, let me just play a little bit of this because she tears him up, and it's the truth is it's oh my God, do I still have it here? Do I have it in here? Yeah, here it is. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's just to listen to her. And I know that McCarthy's not going to kick him out, but it is interesting to hear some Republicans stand up to them.
And now I want to put this past me so I can deliver for the American people.
The thing is, Congressman-elect, integrity means, yes, carrying yourself with honor, but it means telling the truth, being a person of integrity. And if I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment, these are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though. This is about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them. And I think one of the questions that really probably hits home to a lot of people is are you Jewish? We've got a letter that your campaign sent out earlier this year, which reads as follows. As a proud American Jew, I've been to Israel numerous times for educational, business, and leisurely trips. You said there in that letter that you are, quote, a proud American Jew. How do you explain that?
My heritage is Jewish. I've always identified as Jewish. I was raised a practicing Catholic. I think I've gone through this. Even I've not being raised a practicing Jew, I've always joked with friends and circles, even in the campaign, I'd say, guys, I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic. So
unbelievable. He's still lying. He's still, there's no, there's no Jewish background in his life. He actually claimed, for those that don't know this, that his grandparents had to flee the Holocaust. And that's kind of sacred ground for Jews. I mean, I'm not Jewish, but I have a lot of friends that are, and we've talked about that. I went to the opening of the Holocaust Museum when I was a kid in DC. And I'll never forget seeing, the thousands of pictures of the thousands of children. And then later on, they had their shoes there. And to see somebody use that for political gain and to lie like that, I don't know what the Republican Party's in a rock and a hard place here. If I were McCarthy or whoever the speaker is, they have to take some kind of action against this guy. He's just hoping it goes away. But like an idiot, he's going on these shows on Fox thinking they're going to cover his back too. But he obviously thinks he can pull a Trump.
Well, he does. And why not? Because Trump pulled a Trump, right? The fact of the matter is we've seen an awful lot of this. What he's really relying on is the fact that Kevin McCarthy has an incredibly narrow majority in the House of Representatives. And Kevin McCarthy is so desperate at this point to get the speakership and to hold that bit of power. And frankly, it won't be much power because of divisions within the caucus. But he's so desperate to get it that he's not going to mess with this. Because if Santos were to stand down, then McCarthy's advantage there would go down to about 3 seats, right? He would literally be in a position where, then you're talking a handful of members of Congress could say no, and McCarthy's in trouble. So he is no evidence so far that he's willing to stand up on this. And that's a big deal. And I'll tell you one other thing here. That is a Democratic leaning district. If Santos were to quit and the special election was called, it's pretty likely that in short order, a Democrat would be elected to represent that seat. And so he's counting on the Republicans being so afraid of losing a seat that they won't stand up. That is obviously pretty shameful for the Republican Party. But remember, this is the party that kept defending Herschel Walker even after all the revelations about Herschel Walker. So their track record tells you that their willingness to stand up, even when one of their candidates or now elected members of Congress are revealed to be, pretty messy situations, their willingness to stand up is slim to none.
Yeah, I guess the question comes is, at some point, there's a lot that's going to happen in the first quarter, right? And that's what they're hoping. This guy's hoping. They're telling him just hang in there. And, we're going to be, putting together a judiciary committee, and there'll be outrage that Jim Jordan is maybe the head of the judiciary committee. And there'll be outrage about, again, Trump will dominate headlines. Even Trump came out and said this guy should go. So, it's bad. But if you had to guess, does this guy make it into 2024?
I don't think so. I think it's such a mess that, unless I'm misreading this, the revelations probably haven't all come out, right? You're going to get more and more and more. And the one thing, Chip, that has not been explained yet is, where he was getting all this money. Because this is a guy who was kind of scraping by, and then suddenly he's getting $700,000, coming in with jobs that don't make a lot of sense, and then a huge amount of money coming in to fund his campaign. I think that in that zone, once we get to it, you're going to have revelations that are going to be potentially, not certainly, but potentially law violations, and potentially so devastating that the Republicans finally cut him loose. But they're not going to rush to
impeach him. They literally have to impeach him. There's no other way.
They can't really impeach him. Here's what they can do. Theoretically,
it's the same as impeachment, right? It's
right.
The same process.
The House Ethics Committee. What happens is you can essentially have the House Ethics Committee say this guy's got to go. Then you bring it to a vote of the House, and they have in fact kicked members out over the years.
It doesn't have to go to the Senate. It can stay in the House. They manage their own affairs. Yeah. Now let me ask you this: so if in fact that's what they do, if they decide on a vote in the House, because every Democrat will obviously vote for it.
Yep.
Is a special election held immediately? Do you know?
Yeah.
Off the top of your head?
Kathy Hochul. Yeah, I know the details on this. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, could call the special. Anytime that seat goes vacant. Now that seat can go vacant in a number of ways. One, Santos himself can say, "I quit." Then it's vacant. Two, the House can effectively vacate it. But that requires, by the way, a evenly divided ethics committee to do the right thing. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but the
ethics committee will be a majority Republican, obviously.
Well,
right?
it's 5-5 split.
It's a 5-5 split ethics. Okay. All right.
Yeah, with a Republican chair because of their majority. So theoretically, if you could get one Republican on the ethics committee, even if some other Republicans on that committee refuse to go along, you could get to the point where you have something go to Congress. So there's space to move on this thing. But remember, the most important vote that Santos will cast will be right at the start, that vote to make Kevin McCarthy Speaker. And so I think what they're trying to do desperately is to get through the next couple weeks before having to deal with this reality. But the information keeps piling up. And I noticed today that, one of the primary Republican Jewish groups said, we're not going to have anything to do with this guy anymore. And so you're starting to see some movement there. It's a question of whether, frankly, it comes back again to one guy, and that's Kevin McCarthy. Will Kevin McCarthy do the right thing?
Will Kevin McCarthy definitely be the speaker?
Nope, not guaranteed. And that's why there's so much politics even around this Santos issue, because right now
a straight up vote, by the way, or is it a committee vote?
The way the speakership goes, the speakership goes this way. The Republican caucus decides who they want to run for speaker, right? Who they want to have a candidate. The vote is of the whole House, right?
Right.
And so if the Republican caucus is united, then Kevin McCarthy is the speaker, and that's all done. But if 4 or 5 Republicans say, we're not going to vote for Kevin McCarthy, and even if they just stand down, then you've got a situation where McCarthy might not have the votes. The Democrats might actually have more votes cast at that point. You could have all sorts of scenarios here where some Republicans go over to vote for a particular Democrat. You could have a situation where some coalition develops. It's a messy, ugly situation. You could also have a situation where the caucus simply says to McCarthy, look, I think we got a call coming in there.
No, it's okay. Sorry about that.
Where the caucus says to McCarthy, we don't want you anymore, and they pick someone else to be the speaker. All of this comes into play. Now, if I had to bet money, I'd say McCarthy probably gets it, because he's still, he has a lot of advantages, but he hasn't locked it up. And Chip, that's an amazing thing when you are now talking just days before the vote for the speakership, that it's up for grabs.
Before I let you go, obviously, that with the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Matt Gaetz and the Jim Jordans and the baggage that those guys carry, and obviously with Cheney and Kinzinger gone now, and Trump having declared, and Santos, on the wings. Where is that party going to be? Are they going to be leaning towards the big lie Trump part, or does McCarthy want to bring it and kind of try to bring some semblance of the old party back? I don't get it.
McCarthy has already bartered off the ability to bring semblances of the old party back to get
because he's with Green, right? He's
right.
Yeah, okay.
Get the extreme right wingers on board for his effort to become speaker. He's already agreed to giving committee positions and even chairmanships to people who shouldn't be in those positions. And in effect, he has conceded that the focus of this Congress, and frankly, the focus of the Republican Party, is going to be primarily on investigating Hunter Biden and stuff like that. And so it's just the truth. And as a result, at their best, and I say this, cautiously, at their best, they will be obstructionist, right? Okay. At their worst, they will be involved in character assassination and really, really ugly and destructive stuff.
We'll have to wait and see. Mr. Nichols, thank you so much. National correspondent for The Nation. People love you because you always have the insights and can pretty much follow whatever direction I go with this stuff. And I'm very appreciative of your time. Thank you so much.
Chip, it's an honor to be with you. I hope you have a good holiday.
You too, buddy. Be safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Check out thenation.com and you can see his writing, and plus a lot of great writing there. It is a progressive publication, but when I say that and people go, oh, those crazy liberals, the truth is, and this is something everybody should know, the truth is that progressive policies, when implemented correctly, actually help conservatives more than conservative policies help conservatives. I can show you that on a Venn diagram, but it's actually true. It's a long story. All right. I still wear a mask, and I think people should when they go into stores. I went into Costco the other day to get these new glasses, and I think there were 10 people wearing masks, and they all worked there. Why? Well, there's a lot obviously a lot still going on.
I'm now joined by Dr. Peter Hotez, the co-director of vaccine development at Texas Children's Hospital. He is also the dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Hotez. So how concerned are you about this triple-demic, given the fact that, of course, we're seeing COVID, the flu, and RSV?
Well, we're starting to see some fluxes now. So things are starting to move both in a good way and in a bad way. In a good way, the number of cases of influenza, Yamiche, have started to plateau or even now declining. So flu activity is starting to decline, which we haven't seen too often, that it starts to decline this early. So it looks like it's peaked very early. And if this trajectory continues, it may decline as we head further into the winter. That's probably the only good news, because COVID-19 is now starting to go up, particularly in New York, hospitalizations, case positivity. And here's the most important piece. There's one of the subvariants called XBB is climbing in New York. So about half the cases now are XBB. And the reason you need to know that is because the new bivalent booster has some cross protection against XBB, whereas the older immunizations that you had may not. So bottom line is really, really important that people get their new bivalent booster and get it as soon as you can.
Okay, so look, it's a free country. You know, you don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to get a booster or a vaccine. But can I just say you're an idiot if you don't even examine this? I can't tell you how many times Matt Gaetz just said that anybody who wears a mask in Florida is showing their ignorance. And of course, you know, my question, and I said something in a retweet saying like, oh, that's great. Next time you have to get surgery on, tell the doctor to take his mask off. And then the person wrote me saying that, oh, the doctors wear their masks to protect themselves against the patient. I'm like, you know, masks have been around for thousands of years. Vaccines have been around for hundreds of years. mRNA vaccine is a brand new way of teaching your body to better fight against diseases that could kill you. I mean, everybody in my family back east has COVID right now, and they're all triple vaccinated. People go, well, see, there you go. Here's the problem. The reason we have so many variants is because people won't get vaccinated. That's the problem. All right, joining me right now is Rick Heller. He's an infectious disease specialist and nice enough to spend his time with us here. Rick, I am so frustrated with the disinformation spread by particular individuals and people like Rand Paul, that this is all over. They've been saying this now for a year. It's all over. Why are we doing this? We don't need to do this anymore. And you know, and it's a lot of pressure on public health officials and politicians, and they acquiesce. And then we get situations like this. Can you hear me, Rick?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear. All right. So let me ask you this. Right now with this triple pandemic, or this triple, whatever they call it, this onslaught, what public policies could we do to slow this down? And are vaccines and masks still on your plate?
Of course they are. You know, it's when I was probably 10 or 11, I looked at my mother who gave me some chicken soup because I was sick. And I said, Mom, this isn't going to help. And she said, but it wouldn't hurt. Yeah. And unfortunately, to the people who are anti-masks, these actually help. And there's no question about it. And it doesn't, it matters whether it's an N95 or just a cloth mask. And certain masks, you know, much worse than the others. But by and large, what we're buying is helping. And it can help as much as 10, maybe even 20% if you are well and you don't want to, you don't want to catch, if you will, the virus. And then particularly if you may be feeling under the weather, coughing, sneezing, and you're going to argue it's an allergy to people, it actually cuts down about 90% of the virus that you can be exhaling. And there's a number of other things as well to work on, but masks seems to be the hot political debate. And
I'm sorry?
Oh, I can't engage in public policy that way. It just helps. There's no question. And there's a number of other things that we're not focusing on that help.
I say it's like It's like catcher's equipment in baseball, right? I mean, yeah, that you get nicked and dinged. And, I was a catcher for like 30 years. I played baseball. And, but without the mask on, I would have lost my nose and teeth and eyes over a period of time. It made it safe. It didn't make me completely safe. A vaccine will not stop the virus from coming into your body. It will better prepare your body to fight it. I mean, that's a simple fact, right? That we can just tell people is, and when people, I don't know whoever sold vaccines as saying, as some sort of immunization that you can't get the virus. Of course, you still can get the virus, but it will it will minimize or at least help you better battle your body's attempt to fight it off and to stay healthy. That's a pretty easy thing to explain. But I know that, like, when I hear the battle against Fauci and there's absolutely zero evidence that this virus was manufactured by anybody. We can speculate all we want to, but there's no genome evidence or anything to say that this came from a biolab. And if it did, we should be outraged. But there's no evidence to that. So
what can we do? It's move forward, and I hear in some of the network. In some of the media, I hear, always looking back. And the former president did make a big to-do about the vaccine, at least at some point. And that drove more development faster and potentially, more subscription to it. But at the same time, we still only have 60% subscription to this. And so as a herd, as in herd immunity, we could do a much better job.
We have some disturbing numbers, and I'm trying to find this right here. And 4 border states, and then up in Oklahoma, childhood vaccinations, even MMRs, mumps, measles, rubella, are going down. They're down 5%, 8%, and these numbers are disturbing because obviously measles is extremely contagious and still here with us, and we've seen outbreaks. And when I was in Northern California, we used to see it, and I don't find it ironic at all, in very liberal areas, Mill Valley, the Upper Peninsula, which everybody thinks of as being this, it's Pelosi's backyard, right? Oh, but these people weren't vaccinating, and there's still a dangerously low number of people that will give their children MMRs, and you can spread them out, do whatever you want to minimize the effect. That's okay, but again, I'm half frustrated and then half very angry at the disinformation, not misinformation. This is purposely put out there for political reasons to try to make people look bad. Fauci, Biden, and others. President Trump got a vaccination. He almost died of COVID. I mean, there are many examples, and I'm sure you've known people in your life that have died of COVID. My mother died in the middle of this at 98. There are a lot of reasons for people just to take these basic precautions. And I don't know if it's this ridiculous American independence streak. How come I go to Costco and I'm the only one wearing a mask?
The Japanese are a good study in that. And if you go back to 2003 with SARS, which didn't affect Japan as much as it obviously did Hong Kong and some South Chinese cantons, and then Toronto, maybe Vancouver. But and by the way, that was a coronavirus, and it was far deadlier than is this coronavirus.
30% death rate with SARS. 30%.
Yeah, and it was spread in hospitals. It was just a mess. And so, if you ask the Japanese after 2003 and even before, maybe you ask them, why do you wear a mask? And we saw it on airplanes. We saw it obviously in Tokyo, all around. And they would simply say that it's a courtesy. And they weren't asking the question about viability. They were just saying, if I cough or I sneeze, it would be a courtesy to not have anybody guessing what's wrong. But now we have that argument here in the U.S., and we're cultured very differently. Can I say, though, that there are things that can be done beyond masks that are not being done? And I think the CDC bears some responsibility, or a lot of responsibility, for not communicating these facts, not the least of which is antipyretics. These are our friendliest things were in pain after a long run or whatever, ibuprofen, naproxen, and you all know the brand names, acetaminophen. These lower fever. And the most important thing about fever is it keeps virus from replicating. It raises the body temperature, particularly in the core areas, brain and your thorax. And these are very sensitive. So to raise the temperature by shutting your skin down, which by the way means you shiver because you're cold and your head is going to explode from the heat. That is what it's doing. And so to lower that temperature is like shooting your soldiers in the back, for lack of a better one.
Wow. I always thought the temperature was your body working to trying to fight the virus. Is that in effect what causes the temperature?
Yeah. Well, no. Temperature is an evolved response. It raises your body temperature to make not only virus not replicate in your cells, but your cells itself. So it's a bit of a triage or sacrifice. And it lasts as long as it doesn't see the insult of these viruses going into the cells, exploding the cells with 100 viruses released, looking for more cells to infect. And that's the way that you get an epidemic in your body. So, and you know, I was in a class hadn't seen somebody for 3 weeks. I said, "What happened to you?" He said, "I got the flu." This is going back 5 years ago. And I said, "So what are you doing?" He says, "Every day I take 2 extra strength Tylenols, acetaminophen." And he said, and I couldn't get over it. 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, and he stopped taking it, and it went away. And that's not a what do you call it, a statistic of one. That is a real known fact. And an epidemiologist told me, who's also a physician, internist, said never treat fever. And it's hard to do.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard of that though. Yeah, during this, I've heard that as well, that the fever is there. It's working for you. Last question, as we move forward into 2023, and we watch this coronavirus and keep our fingers crossed that we're not visited again by even a greater issue. Because, as you mentioned before, some of these are extremely deadly, smallpox, 30 to 40%. I mean, we eradicated smallpox, but we still have the viruses. Russia still has one, and we still have one in some freezer somewhere. I guess the question is, as we move forward, is it possible? How long does it take for the culture to change? Because I can foresee me wearing a mask on an airplane and in airports for an indeterminate amount of time. What about you?
Yes, I do for the most part, but occasionally I don't have one. I go to a senior living place from time to time, and people are masking up, particularly the staff. And then amongst the residents, they're masking up. And so for that, I will. And now more than ever, I'm not religious enough about it, but I'm also very carefully attuned to my symptoms. I have all these biometrics going on. And I will say that the most interesting thing to me from a disease spread point of view is only 10% of the infected people are spreading 90% to 90% of the infected. That means that just 1 in 10 is the culprit of this. And by the way, that 1 in 10 is not asymptomatic. They're super spreaders. They're people that the Harvard Business Review refers to as presenteeism. And those are people who present themselves sick to work, obviously out shopping and things like that. And that care needs to be communicated to take better care.
I still haven't got it. My wife got it. We were sitting in the same bed. She was coughing in my direction. My son and I didn't get it. He still lives with us. And, it's like, how does that happen? And we're still learning a lot from this stuff. Rick, your website is Well on Inc. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Wello, as in hello, Wello Inc.
Wello Inc. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Stay well, my friend. Okay.
Thank you. You too.
Infectious disease specialist, Rick Heller, on a very difficult thing to wrap your head around. It really is. For me, the part about it that bothers me the most, I think, is that, we have all these possibilities here that we could do. We have I mean, we have really smart people who have done so much for us, and yet we find ourselves in the same spot again and again and again. And that spot, of course, is with a disease that killed more than 1 million Americans, and people that just will not wrap their head around it and figure it out. All right. So this is interesting. I want to show you something real quick, because I love to get a chance to put video up here that no one has seen before. I want to show you what it's our video of the day, and I try to do this as much as I can. This is a video of a volcano from outer space, and when we talk about there was one called there's actually a volcano under Yellowstone National Park, and they talked about if this thing were to explode, it could produce the kind of effects that maybe a nuclear weapon would. But just look at this one and see what I'm talking about. That's amazing, right? Wow, man, that's unbelievable. When you look at something like that and you ask yourself, just what can humans do to the earth that the earth is capable of? Well, we've talked about climate change, and we've also talked about chlorofluorocarbons, that we had a hole in the ozone that we managed to start to fix by getting rid of chlorofluorocarbons and sprays and other ways that would go up and knock a hole out and make not just us susceptible to the sunlight, but also to kill living things in the oceans that fish feed on, and it goes on and on and on. Anyway, that was today's video. All right. This is our By the Numbers segment. And of course, we'd like to bring in the one and only tax attorney, Steve Moskowitz from Moskowitz LLP. Hello, Steve. How are you? So there's a couple things I wanted to talk to you about. And the first question I had for you was, when this George Santos story, it hit in my head yesterday. They had donated $700,000 of his own money into his political campaign. And I thought to myself, can you deduct that?
Now we're going to get mostly lawyers' answers are, it depends. Let me explain. I'd argue. This question is too simple. The answer is no.
Really?
Really.
That's a job.
I would never joke about taxes, Chip.
Okay, but wait a second. So isn't that an investment? Aren't you investing into trying to get a job? I mean.
So this area is specifically covered. Congress does not want people taking a tax deduction for political contributions. So this is a flat out no.
I see. Huh. And that also includes the
rest. And I don't say that often. We've worked together for many years. Usually it's, well, here's the way you do that, and the workaround, and it depends. Now, if we do this, so we do it that way. This is just no.
Yeah. All right. I got some end of year questions for you, but this other one came up in Congress the other day, a bill that will never leave committee about taking away the tax exempt status of nonprofits, but more specifically churches, and maybe even more specifically churches that engage in political activity, which apparently they're, prohibited from doing that. I didn't realize the number was it's somewhere like in the $200 billion a year that people give churches. And that's a significant amount that would be taxed, but not the number that I thought it would. Do you think that's pretty much going to be sacrosanct and safe moving forward?
Yes, because, if you really want to upset, just look at politics. You really want to upset a large amount of people, go after the religion and see what happens.
Right.
That'll really, really do it in large numbers.
I've always said that we'll have a gay, Muslim, former jihadist, transsexual become president before an atheist, because you say atheist and people immediately recoil. Interestingly, though, as some atheists will say, wait a second, we're the best person to have in there because we want to protect things right now because we don't believe there's anything down the road. So we're going to be best about protecting this. So it's a really interesting thing. But the tax code for that, did that come up? I know I'm asking you stuff right off the top here, but I know when we started the income tax, in
1913, March 1st, 1913. And contrary to popular belief, I was not in practice at the time.
Neither was I. Thank you. When we did that, did we have deductions and stuff like that, or did that come a lot later?
So what happened was, when the income tax started out, it started out as a, quote, tax on the wealthy. The top tax bracket was 6%. And in order to be in the 6% tax bracket, you had to be making over, and remember, this is in $1913, over $500,000 in $1913. This was a very specific limited tax aimed at a few very wealthy people. Look where it's gone today.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, yeah, we have to have a discussion about taxes in this country, and I know, and I agree with you. And this is something that I've never filed a short form in my entire life. I always filed a long form, and I've taken advantage of all those things to me. And I'm a progressive, but I mean, of course, I want to do that. But there obviously, you know, there are other things too that we do with our tax dollars, which I think bother people more than the actual tax situations. Speaking of which, there's a couple days left in the year. Okay. I know, and we've talked about this before, that if you want to set up a pension, you could actually do it past, and it would apply for this year. You could do it after the 1st of
So it
January.
depends on the pension.
Right.
There are 24 different types, and some you can deduct as late as the extended due date. So that gets you into 2/3 of the way into 2023 and still deducted from 2022. However, there are some that are not that way. So if you're not familiar with it, go ahead and contribute to retirement accounts right now. That's one of the things you want to do.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing you want to do is make your last minute estimated tax payments. Now, for those of you that are in California and who took advantage of AB5, where essentially that was a workaround to the limit on the deduction on your federal return of your state taxes, if you made that election, although you could pay that as late as March, you'd have to wait till 23 to get the federal benefit. So you want to do that one on or before December 31st. You have to hurry up. Another thing that you want to do is organize your tax records, because the older they get, the more lost, and you can't find it. And I was thinking about this, or maybe it was that. And that's just the way human memory works. And then also, there's an awful lot of people working at home right now. You want to see if the home office tax deduction would benefit you. And last but not least, you want to file and pay your taxes on time to avoid the penalties. And that's just a top smattering of things. There's lots more of it.
Yeah.
If I took over your whole show, we still wouldn't have enough time.
I always take the last week of the year off to start on my taxes, even though I haven't got my W-2s or 1099s, I should say, and W-2s. I mean, I always start on it now, so I'm ready for when that stuff comes in. I know what I made, and I always tell people that, I always tell them to go to get a tax attorney like Moskowitz. But I also, the part of it is that, for the investment of getting people that know what they're doing, I've saved over the years. There's so much. All right. So New Year's coming up. Next year is going to be the big year, Steve. That's the big year for you already have big years, but for everybody watching, 2023, it feels right. I like those odd years.
I wish everybody tremendous health first, success, good family life. But as to the success, remember, the tax law has two facets. Everybody knows about one, collecting money from us. But the other one is it's a system of incentives, because in a democracy, even if something is good for the economy and the government wants you to do it, they can't order you to do it.
Oh, before you go, I'm sorry. I just saw where Congress, I thought we were going to have this Venmo 1099 thing come up in 2023, but they pushed it back a year, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, because that means that everybody was going to be getting 1099s. And I don't think most people really understood that.
Once again, it's a headache for people that are not familiar with it. If you know what you're doing, basically you go to somebody that this takes care of it for you.
Yeah. So the people that paid people with Venmo, they got another year to get ready, but it's going to come, and they're going to be looking. So when you're paying,
it doesn't change what the law is. It just changes the reporting requirements. So the bottom line is, if somebody pays you something that's taxable, you pay your taxes on it. But not all payments are taxable, and that's where the confusion comes in.
Yeah. By the
For
numbers,
example, if you borrow money, that's not taxable.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? All right, by the numbers with tax attorney Steve Moskowitz, Moskowitz LLP. Good to see you, my friend. Hey,
always a pleasure. Thanks,
have a great New Year's Eve, okay, my friend?
Thanks. You too.
All right, be well. Thank you. I love it. I think it is fascinating to see, just what you can do with money, and when you put it away, and you have kids, small kids. This person, my next guest, the one and only Nicky Maduro, has young kids.
They bleed you dry. Those children do. They bleed you dry.
And it never ends. Even when they leave your house, they're still doing it.
Exactly. They're such.
I didn't get to my story today on TikTok, and it just drives me crazy. Most people think they're going to lose TikTok on their phones. It's only for government issued devices, and I'm like, but it's just like when I talk about masks and vaccines, and people go, "Oh, yeah, you're somebody. I know somebody got the vaccine and they got COVID." I go, "Well, yeah, you can still get COVID. You just won't get it as bad."
Yeah.
How freaking stupid are people?
Very.
Very.
The answer is very. But yeah, I mean, do you have TikTok on your phone though?
Oh yeah, I use it all the time. I love it.
I have I mean, I don't particularly love it. It's just another social media platform. Would I cry if it's gone? No. Am I crying that Twitter is dying? No. You just got to adapt, I guess.
Twitter will be there for years. TikTok is great. There'll be something, right now, Google is dying to try to compete with TikTok. They have their shorts, and they really do, they're good. But what I love about TikTok is the algorithm. So if I start, I watch these people talking about science and these funny things about science. You know me, right? With that, right? And especially astrophysics and stuff. And so I'll just keep getting those, and that's all I'll get for a while. Whereas if I go and I watch the 40-year-old moms dancing in their underwear,
which is what's on my feed all the time. There you go.
What are you starting your show today at 12 o'clock, Miss Maduro?
Well, we'll get an update on the whole Southwest thing. I saw this funny joke on Twitter, actually. Nobody hit all the Mega Millions numbers. They're like, you have a better chance of winning Mega Millions than getting on a Southwest flight right now.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's
I'm
insane.
down here in San Diego, and it's like they had lines out the building, and I feel kind of bad for Southwest because look, they have made. Do they have outdated technology? I don't know what caused this, but I guarantee you, after the government gets after them, their prices will go up because they'll have to do.
Oh, they'll have to.
Yeah,
but they don't have like agreements with other carriers. So with Southwest, if your flight's canceled, they don't like work with other airlines to get you one another. That's a problem. Like, help people out. So we'll touch on that. Did you see Greta Thunberg's tweet at Andrew Tate? Oh, we'll talk about that. Yeah, she did a big clap back at him. He was trying to show off all of his cars, basically, and one of the viewers sent me her comment, so you can look it up. I don't know if I should say the word on the air because
it's okay. Go ahead.
She called him a prick, basically.
Wait a second. You're afraid to say prick on this show? Come on.
But yeah, so she kind of clapped back at Andrew Tate, and if you don't know who he is, he's like a kickboxer or.
I'm not familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was great on that. And we'll touch on that. We'll update the thing of Buffalo. Should you set New Year's resolutions? Do you set resolutions, Chip?
No.
You're just perfect the way you are. I knew you were going to say that.
You know that. What can I improve? I don't
exactly.
think
so it's all.
Did you see this, by the way? Did you see this? Look at this. This is a volcano from outer space.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Isn't that amazing?
Where is that volcano?
It's somewhere, I believe, it's not in Hawaii, obviously, with all that landmass. I don't know. I should go to academy.org and check it out. Somebody just sent it to me. But it was pretty amazing.
That is pretty cool. Yeah.
George Santos, we were like, what's the over under? Will he make it through February?
I mean, I was listening to your show, and I forget the gentleman that you were speaking with had a great point that the Republicans are going to stand by him because of where the district is. It'll just be another Democrat, and that just goes to show that Republicans suck. They just do. They have no moral code. They don't care. All that matters is the vote. That's why they liked Herschel Walker, a little puppet for them. Thank God that didn't work out. So the Republicans.
Do you have 60 seconds here? Do you have 60 seconds?
Sure.
Can I come play my Lying Liars video?
Please.
You can find this on Twitter. Here we go.
Okay. Santos admitted that he lied about key details in his resume.
That's George Santos, a Republican elected to Congress who lied about finishing college.
A lot of people overstate in their resumes.
He lied about his work on Wall Street. It takes guts. He lied about his sexuality.
I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that.
And he lied about being a Jew and having family members who escaped the Holocaust. But other than that,
this is a big deal. He is about to serve as a member of Congress.
He's also suspected of having committed crimes overseas and campaign finance irregularities. This dude could be president.
George Santos in New York. We have the largest Republican Jewish caucus.
That's how disconnected Republicans are to the truth.
I want the truth!
They used to think it's only a lie if you get caught, but now that doesn't even matter.
fist, please.
Today, Republicans who still campaign on lies
Bullshit.
defend this butt jockey by saying at least he pretended to be a straight Jewish college grad on Wall Street. That counts for something, right? I wonder what's on his laptop.
Sexy time. Goddamn right.
Who's with me?
Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, I can't. I like Tulsi Gabbard kind of calling him out, like, do you have no shame? But yeah, they're going to stand by. I will be shocked if they don't. That's what I'll say. I'll be shocked if they don't stand by him and kind of force him out. But I mean, as it looks, he's going to be a congressman.
All right. The one and only Nikki Maduro. Catch her show today on YouTube at noon.
Yes. Join me.
Every day. All right. Be great. I'll talk to you later, kiddo. Thanks. All right. I'm Chip Franklin. That's it. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk about cannabis. And I'm going to actually, no, I'm not going to smoke a joint. No, I don't smoke. But I do edibles. I do. But that's a whole nother thing. That's on tomorrow's show, plus videos you'll only find here. I appreciate it. Please subscribe and tell people to subscribe. We're trying to grow, and we appreciate you being with us every step of the way. Till then, I'm Chip Franklin. See ya.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?